competency-based curriculum, but most importantly, she's the treasurer of the National Parents Association. Thank you, Nancy, for creating time for us. We were just talking about the cost of education and the burden that now weighs heavily on the parent. I just want to feel from where you sit, do you feel like parents in this country are a bit overwhelmed by what they have to part with when it comes to taking their children to school?
Yeah, I think, thank you very much for calling me here and welcoming me. I think we as the Parents Association, all the parents in this country, we are a bit overwhelmed because of the education systems which are there, because they are very costly. We as the parents, for example, I have a child who is transiting to grade 7, and then another one transiting to Form 1. So having a child in grade 6 and in class 8, it makes us very, very difficult as the parents, because we are, in fact, for grade 6, we don't know, we are not even sure whether our children will transit to grade 7. Because when we look at the infrastructure in secondary school, it is not even, it is not available for our children to transit there. So we are stranded. The education system is very, very high.
All right. I mean, Dr. Why are we having, I'm actually sitting here and I'm wondering, why are we having this conversation about the basics? Things that we should have discussed as a country before this train left the station.
Because when Amina told us, let us hold this conversation before we proceed, we shouted her and hounded out of the Ministry of Education. We are a country of impulses. This is what is politically correct now, it must be done now. When someone says, let us sit and think, they are shouted down. We started to implement this curriculum before we had a complete costed implementation plan. We still don't have it now.
How many years down the line?
Because
that's critical.
Because KICD kept producing versions of it, and the government will not commit to any of those versions. And for that reason, we got into the implementation process before we had allocated cost and said it will cost us this much to educate a child from PP1 to university. They will need this much at PP level, they will need this much at primary level, they will need this much at secondary level. And how are we raising the funds? How much is the government putting in? How much are development partners putting in? How much are parents putting in? And answering the question of how do we deal with the children whose parents can't pay to make sure they still enjoy their constitutional right of a free and compulsory basic education. We did not address that. So it is coming back to haunt us now. But having said that, I think the most vexing question right now is the issue of where are the children transiting. I need to explain that when a decision was made to have a transition happen at age 12, it was based on research that had shown a lot of children were dropping out of school at age 12, 13 anyway. The fact that they were still in primary notwithstanding, because in some of our cultures, children go through initiation at that age, and they feel too big to continue being in primary school. And many of them were dropping out. So our decision was made, let us create a transition at that age, they move into something new. That during that time, they feel different now, we move them into a different level, and we use that level. In fact, some of us had proposed that junior secondary be just 2 years. We use that level to try and figure out which path this child is going to take before they go to senior school, where they will be divided according to the pathways that they are taking. So that transition is important. That is one. Secondly, I know that the Parents Association submitted a memorandum saying we should domicile junior secondary in primary school. And a lot of people are saying that. But those people are blind to the fact that we have primary schools that are struggling to be even primary schools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think people are just here in Nairobi or in some other wealthy parts of Kenya. Go to Kilifi now. See primary schools that are not even primary schools. You want to tell me we'll put a junior secondary there, and those children will not be disenfranchised?
Struggling to be primary schools to mean?
Struggling to be primary schools in the sense that some of them have children learning in the open. Some of them have children learning two groups in one classroom. Like here now, one teacher is teaching from there and another is teaching from here. So if you put a junior secondary there,
so you will
not disenfranchise those children. And those children, some of them will not drop out of school out of frustration. So I have a problem with that. I know that we have had issues around the numbers, but I have some numbers here. Of the numbers you have shown us here in the examinations, sub-county schools are presenting 486,000 candidates, 397 this year. And those are 6,867 schools. We have another about 1,000 sub-county schools that don't have Form 4s this year. They started much later, so they haven't reached Form 4. If you look at the numbers in Form 1 in sub-county schools, it's about 900,000. So the about 900,000 students in Form 1 are the ones who are going to move to Form 2. Yeah? And create the 900,000 spaces there. To me, those 900,000 spaces can accommodate junior secondary. If we decide sub-county schools will take junior secondary.
But don't we have candidates?
Let me just finish.
Are sitting for KCB
because they are 1.28 million. And out of those, 264,000 are in private schools. Out of the CBC candidates, 264,000 are in private schools, most of which have been asked to create space for junior secondary. So many of them, at least 160,000 from where I sit, will have their own children transit in those schools. So if you have 160,000 transiting to private schools where they currently are, and saying 100 will move back to public, and you have 900,000 in sub-county schools, that gives you 1,160,000. That takes us to 80% transition. This country has not had that level of transition. Magoha told us 100%. KNBS data tells us last year we had 79% transition rate from primary to secondary. So let us not lie that we will realize 100% transition. The spaces available can take at least 85% of CBC in sub-county schools. Now the question that we'll deal with is where we take the Form 1.
That is what I want.
Because we need to start to create, senior and junior school. They are not going to be the same. They require different facilities, different teachers, and different competencies.
Let me just get your quick thoughts, Nancy, here. Do you feel ready to, is it a son or daughter, the one who is in grade 6?
It's a daughter.
Yeah, are you ready to let her go several kilometers away to a boarding school as the transition one?
Not necessarily. So that's why I've said they should go to sub-county schools.
Yeah.
87% of our sub-county schools are day. And so even those that are not day can be opened up to be day. For junior secondary, I support day because we have 12-year-olds. We need them to be in a day school.
Yeah.
And the long term should be to separate junior secondary from senior secondary so that we have the 12 to 15 years in one school and the rest in another.
There's a reason I've asked her that, because I want to get what you prefer as a parent. There's a concern that parents have shared with regards to the options that are there on where to take your child. What works for you?
I think for us as the parents, let me first comment on the parents. We are saying the grade 6 now, they should transit in the primary school, but then we call it lower primary. And then when we go to grade 7, we call them upper primary, because the children, or my daughter, she's 12. I cannot allow her to go in a day school where he will meet the class 8 now, who will be in the Form 1. They are 15 years and above. My daughter, she is only 12. In the secondary school, she will find other learners who are 14, 15, 16 years. How will they even munch? How will they even be in the playground? How will they talk? A girl of class 6, class 6, grade 6, 12 years, with another learner who is 17 years. They will not even munch even when they are talking. And we will risk our girls. In fact, we are living in a town. I will risk my girl telling her to mbonda matatu to school with a grade 7 or class 8 student. So what we are saying, what we are recommending as the parents, grade 6 should transit in primary school, but the structure should change into upper primary. And then from now, the Form 1, we should call it senior secondary for our children to be able to transit and to feel comfortable with the parents, because they are very young. A grade 6 student is very young to mingle with class 8 or...
Thank you, Nancy. So Janet, how do we resolve this? Because they're already having the CAPC exams, and this means that what should happen next is that they transition. We are all here talking about how there seems to be some level of unpreparedness in terms of where they go, and even confusion. Let me even cite that. So how do we fix this? Because it seems like time is not on our side.
Well, I think also the question of preparedness. I like giving this example that being Kenyan is a unique thing. So that a simple example, such as maybe getting the Huduma cards. You remember the Huduma cards, that the Huduma numbers, that we had an entire, say, 3 months to go and register and collect. But the last week is when everybody was rushing. In fact, the last day to necessitate additional time. And up to now, there are people who still did not go and collect the Huduma numbers. So that there is no particular day that we shall say that we are fully prepared now. We just are very pathetic at planning and at doing the right things. And I like giving the example of Mwai Kibaki when he came in 2002 and declared free primary education. He was heavily criticized because the arguments that we did not prepare, we struggled, and we're still struggling to date. But it was a beautiful thing to see 1 million more children coming back to school. It was phenomenal.
So how do we apply that in this CBC dream?
Yes, the issue about preparedness, and I like saying, and I like my colleagues like Emmanuel, because we've walked this journey for quite a long time, resolving or maybe reforming our curriculum is a conversation that has stayed with us for a very, very, very long time. We talk about the Vision 2030, and when you read the Vision 2030, our education system was supposed to adjust because what we were doing in 844 could not help us, achieve the aspirations of Vision 2030. And so still that time, during Mwai Kibaki's time when the Vision 2030 was written, the conversations about reforming our curriculum were begun. How far are we from 2030? We are barely, I think we are 7 years shy. So at what point then were we supposed to prepare if since the inception we did not prepare, and now we are here, we are 7 years shy to 2030, and we are still saying that we are not prepared. So that I would say that it was bold. It was a bold move to relook at our curriculum. I would say that for me, this is a phenomenal time because we have not seen a time when education has been this politically, it's occupying a very high profile at the political table. And the education sector is the gainer in all this because just for this conversation, 10,000 classrooms have been constructed in our schools. Even if CBC goes away, the 10,000 classrooms will not go away. We know and we have had a struggle about building the infrastructure. For the first time, we have seen CDF do amazing things in our school. So for me, and having been within the sector for, I think, over a decade now, and having conversations about, let us improve this, let us build this, I think the conversation around CBC has really has brought tremendous change into the sector. It is not something that we will live to regret. And when I listen to the conversations from parents and the assessments, some are saying, I have seen a big difference, and I would probably want to listen from the parents. I've seen a big difference between my child who is doing the 844 and my child who is doing the CBC, to want to say what is the bigger good. I challenge a lot of people, and even the members of parliament, and those who've been walking around saying CBC this, CBC the other. Their children are not even in 844 schools. Their children are in international schools. What have they seen in international schools that is not in 844 schools? Yet they want to encourage the Kenyan children and the Kenyan poor to continue enjoying a system of education that is seriously not preparing them for the world that we want to become, that is seriously compromising other competencies and other potentials of those children. So what I'm saying is that, yes, the country was probably not prepared to begin the CBC conversation, but I really want to laud the previous administration for taking a bold step, to begin. Yes, there are challenges that abide, and I want to encourage the current administration and to really say that congratulations, that what we were fearing, because there was a lot of political undertones that we will scrap off CBC and so on, but it is a listening government. They have listened and they have said, no, we think CBC is good, but we want to improve it in this way and the other way. And I think that is the way to go.
All right, Janet. Nancy, do you think CBC is good? You have like generations of learners from 844 and the CBC learner that is under your care as well. What experience have you gotten from both, and are you contented that CBC is the way to go?
Yeah, CBC is the way to go because, like, for example, if I can give it, my girl is able to wash the clothes, cook tea, cook rice. In fact, even if I'm away, they cannot even sleep without taking food or their supper. So I support CBC, but then we need to look at it in a way that we will make it more better than the way it is now, because it's quite good. It is preparing our children to the market out there. Because like now, I have a child who is in grade 5, and she is doing juices. She is selling the juice to the students, and she is making money. Yes.
All right. Daktari, I mean, in terms of learning outcomes, and now we have candidates who are going to be sitting for exams that cut across, the ones under the CBC and the ones who are still under the 844 system. In terms of outcomes, what are we looking at? Where do you sit on that matter?
I didn't get the question properly. In terms of which outcomes?
In terms of the learning outcomes that are promised by the CBC and the ones that we had under the 844, what do you propose?
Okay, truth is that we needed to reform the curriculum. That is not in question. We advocated for this reform. We are happy that the reform has come. I am unhappy with the haphazard manner of implementation, because it is likely to cause disaffection and therefore lack of public support to a process that is actually very good. We have to make sure, to me, from where I sit, we need to get the Ministry of Education working as a system. Magoha ran the Ministry of Education ran as an individual enterprise. We need to get the Ministry of Education to function as a system. I want to see the National Education Board, which is provided for in the Basic Education Act, established to advise the CS, because that is supposed to be there by law. If necessary, I want to see a standing committee set up with a simple mandate of troubleshooting the challenges that will emerge in the implementation of CBC, because we are implementing something new. So there will be new challenges emerging at every level until the current grade 6 graduate from university. Every level we go will be a new level. We will learn something new. We will meet new challenges. We need a system that troubleshoots those problems to the end of this process, because we want this to succeed.
Thank you so much. And we've run out of time. I'll give you, Nancy, 30 seconds for your final words, then Janet, as we close. Nancy?
What I would like to say to our students who are sitting for exams, the grade 6, the class 8, and the Form 4, the National Parents Association wish them success.
Thank you so much. Janet?
Really, thank you. And I think for me, the issue here, the big issue is about transition, because again, we will be staring at headlines in January about so many children not able to go to school. I do not want parents to focus on the 53,000, but we must really work together to bring out all other hidden costs and to just make sure that education is affordable for every child. I like telling people, don't think about yourself, think about that orphan, think about those so many other marginalized children that cannot be able to access this public good.
All right. Daktari, your final thoughts as my colleague Ayub joins us. A lot has been said on social media.
I join the parents in wishing the candidates all the best, and the teachers who are going to be administering these exams the best of time. And wish the task force, because I know they must be working on a draft report to present to the president. I wish them a very productive and promising, and they need to understand on that report, the future of this country's education relies.
All right.
I wish them all the best as they write that report.
All right. The report is set to be coming out in the course of this week. And of course, we anticipate that that is going to inform the next course of action when it comes to the implementation of the competency-based curriculum. Of course, a lot still to be discussed under this, and it's a topic that we should be picking up as we continue to just look at the status of our education sector in the country, coming at a time when there's efforts that are being put in place to ensure that we have all learners access education, and not just education, but quality education for that matter. And I've not been doing this show alone. Of course, my colleague Ayub Abdikadir on the other side. Just to pick your quick thoughts also, as you were joining us on social media, what have you been saying, Ayub?
And very important, such as an insightful discussion of the education and the preparations for the examinations. And of course, we did advise our viewers to get in touch with us on Twitter at Citizen TV Kenya, at Ayub Abdikadir, and at Safin_Cheng. Here's what we're saying on Twitter. Bob Otieno Wino says basic education is supposed to be free and government should take the burden, not parents, as enshrined in the new constitution, of course, promulgated on the 27th of August 2010. Engineer Lazaro says right to basic education might be monopolized to the rich if not properly checked. Government should consider that our living standards going down while the cost of living is tripling the economy. We have other feedback, of course. These are just sample feedback from Twitter. LJ Sindani says doing away with boarding schools is easy, and very easy for that matter. The problem, he says, is putting classes in our education system. If all schools were to be day, we wouldn't be having competition for schools and all children could access education in the country. That is what he says on Twitter. Remy Butia says Kenya should systematically remove barriers to quality education, raising teaching standards to providing greater access to textbooks, clean and safe sanitation to ensure education is accessible to all Kenyans. Oringe Waswa says the government must strike the appropriate chords and get everything regarding the education sector right. Any wrong or a misinformed decision will throw our learners into a disarray and jeopardize the whole education sector. Godi Barasawere says the education sector is the much-needed software that powers up every aspect of the socio-economic machine of our country. Careful, proper and critical focus must be accorded to this sector for smooth running of affairs in the country. And the last tweet from Reverend Harry Koskei says CBC, the competency-based curriculum, was overrated. It should have been implemented slowly. Thus, the government should find a mechanisms of covering the costs to ease parents' burden. Success to all the candidates, the KCSE candidates and the KCP candidates, and KEPSEA, he says, as per his tweet. And of course, there are some other tweets that are coming in on Twitter handle. Of course, this is on the hashtag Daybreak. Bernard Okanga says, I agree with Manyasi, who is one of our guests here this morning in regards to the topic at hand. Besides the conducive environment offered in boarding schools, he says distribution of these schools is extremely skewed. My locality has over 15 secondary schools with a radius of 5 kilometers. If we were to do day school, he says this would have been relocated, and most are church-sponsored, according to him. Of course, many feedback coming in, but because of time, we can't sample them all at this time. And such informative discussion that you have had with the guests.
Indeed, just looking at the status of education, one Omar Ahmed says, not everybody has a school next to their homestead. Kenya is not only in urban towns with schools and matatus. Of course, also another one there saying parents have a choice to take their children either to boarding school or to day school. But of course, this conversation should continue. A lot is to be said. Continue interacting with us on social media. Let's, take this forward. And of course, just thanking my guests for the show this morning, Janet Ouko, an education expert, former CEC for education in Nairobi County, Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, Sante Daktari, the Executive Director of Sawa Agenda, and Nancy Shege, Treasurer, National Parents Association. Asante, Ms. Shege, for creating time for us this morning. And my name is Safina Chiengoma. Always a pleasure to do this for you each and every Wednesday morning. We appreciate your time and your contribution on the show, by the way.
Because we won't do always this alone, we also thank you again for your time and company, because you chose to wake up with Daybreak on Citizen TV, at Citizen TV Kenya, at Ayub Abdikadir, and at Safin_Acheng. They say learning is eternally continuous. Thank you for your time. And thanks to my colleague, Fosi, and thank you to you too for watching. We'll see you next week here at the same time on Wednesday on Daybreak at Citizen TV Kenya. Good morning.